Welcome to the 2020 Campus Plan Updates webinar and kickoff. I look back. I've been looking back. We've been doing these about 7 years, and you know the progress we've had with these, the work we've had with these has been great. Many of y'all have been doing this for a substantial amount of time, and I really appreciate both the degree to which you've committed to this work and also the way in which this work has evolved over time. So I want to talk about what we're going to do today. Those of you who have been with me for some time on this, this is actually old hat. You probably can, you not only could do this with me, but you could probably sing the chorus. But we're going to talk a little bit about what's new. Every year we do a little bit what's new, and this year there's actually a few things that are, I think, going to be of not just of interest to folks, but also really useful in a more global sense about what we've done and added. I want to talk a bit about more, just underscore again why we do these things, talk about the process, and then that's sort of like submitting your update and getting help. So that's the overview of what we're going to do. The one thing I want to start with, though, is this fact. So this is something that we alluded to at the Momentum Summit, but this is actually really a big deal. And and amongst my other tasks, responsibilities, duties, I am responsible for the keeping of the Association of Education, the Alliance of High Educational Agency Heads data, and I'm looking like I might have lost my slide deck. Is that the case? Yes, that is the case.
Yes.
That is awesome. So again, let me explain a few things about Teams. One is I don't really know a hell of a lot about how this is going to work, but we're going to go ahead and try this one more time, upload it from the computer. File already exists, replace it. I guess, so here's the thing too, a little thing about Teams. If you're having trouble with your audio, so I'm told I need to select my desktop to make it not go away, and I will do that. The only challenge I've got with that is it will also, here we go. It may end up also meaning that I don't get to see anything in the chat. So if this falls out again, Danny, I'm going to take your suggestion and go to desktop. But the problem with that is I won't see the chat anymore, which is perhaps a design feature of Teams, but it also does mean that I won't see any questions coming in, so I'll have to pause back out to check.
Jonathan, if you missed the chat, I'll keep looking at them and I'll give you a yell. Okay.
Thank you, Robert. So we'll let this.
I said if you missed the chat, I'll give you a yell.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Robert. That's Robert Todd, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Success. I'm also want to point out I'm joined today at least. I've got Robert Todd, who's the AVC for Student Success, and we've got Vance Gray. Some of y'all have been talking with Vance a bit and know Vance from previous work. Vance has been working with us to sort of support Momentum work in this spring, and we're really pleased to have him with us, so I want to thank him for his work here. It looks like everyone's in audio, and everyone can now see my slides again, so I want to talk about this. We have crossed the 50% point for young adults with credentials of economic value, and you can sort of see the trajectory going from the 43% range up to 50% range in Georgia. That's a short period of time, less than a decade, to move the needle that much is a substantial amount of growth. And it does have a lot to do with the work that we've done with Complete College Georgia and with the efforts that campuses have done. I want to start out with acknowledging that we appreciate that work and that we recognize that it's been hard work. And as we come into this coming year, we recognize it's going to be a substantial lift, and so we appreciate the fact. But I thought starting, and I really did want to recognize that at the outset, substantial work has been accomplished already, and we are able to. And one of the points of the Complete College Georgia updates is we can document the ways in which we've done this. So. This work is not an idle report that gets sent in and is not used and not looked at. It is a report that we actually value quite a bit, and I'm hoping that, again, this is something that gets used on your campus. So what's new for 2020? In the past couple of years, we haven't actually changed too much in these reports. This year, it's a little different. So this year, the plan update and structure is actually somewhat changed. There's a new element to talk about that we'll talk about in a bit. That is I think pretty important. It'd be pretty interesting to see what y'all come up with, what y'all submit. It is not a, I don't think it's a hard lift, but it's going to be, there's a bit of a new structure to it. We have now, and this is something most of you may know about already, but I want to reiterate it here. In the past, we have just sent out flat file Excel spreadsheets to everyone of their validated data coming out of the ADC for you to use in your planning and your reporting. About half of those are now going to be half of those now are in click data visualizations, which allow you to push and manipulate that data, to sort and filter. It also allows you to do comparisons with institutions and sector and the system on your own, and do it within those sort of granular levels, something we could not deliver at the with an Excel spreadsheet. There are some that will still come as spreadsheets, in part because the reports themselves are just pretty complex. But those are, the data visualizations are available. I just want to sort of make sure that we talk about what will be where. Strategy survey, every year we sort of take a look at the strategy survey, that's and make updates and changes to it. And again, this year is no different. Big thing, template is back. So those of you who've been with me for who've been with us for a couple of years, or all the way back, we started out free form. We've gone towards a template. We then went away from a template. We now have a template that's available, is not required, but the template is back, and I'm going to talk a bit about both the why and the what. And then the pandemic update. And again, this is something that y'all have probably already seen a look into. Your return to fall instruction reports have been asked to provide some information about momentum and the pandemic. And we're just going to mirror that in this report. It will have a little bit of a different flavor, I think, but it should be the same, similar material, similar information. I want to talk a bit, just briefly, to make sure we're all, sort of moving forward on the same page, about why we do this. So, for us, for the system office, this is our best look into the work you do. And so when you sit back and you say, you ponder about how we have helped to develop some of the structures around having campuses support one another to make these connections and understand who's doing what well and who is struggling with what in what areas and may need to have some connections made. This is how we can see your priorities and your work. It has been really valuable in the last couple of years for us as we've developed momentum summits, as well as the advising academies, as well as just ad hoc communications and connections, that we can look into these reports and actually sort of have a pretty good sense of the feel and focus of the campuses, so that we can begin to sort of use the expertise that is spread out across our 26 institutions to support one another. Because again, the system benefits from the collective advantage of having 26 very powerful, very innovative institutions who can support one another. I think arguably from the institution side of things, the big advantage is that it's an opportunity to reflect and refine what you do. How have you done it? What have we done? Where do we want to go? It's also, and I think frankly, a pretty good vehicle for showing off your work. And we want it to continue to be that way. We also appreciate the fact that these are oftentimes reflections on the work that has been done, what has not worked, what you think might work differently. And also a really good opportunity for you to structure strategic planning, particularly in between your phases of strategic planning. This is a good check-in point for y'all. And we've heard that from some of you, and I hope it's useful for you in that process. We do, like I say, use these. We read these. These are ways that we respond to policymakers at the Capitol. We will expect to see that a lot as we again make an argument about the ways in which we're supporting students in the transition to virtual instruction, and then as we come back to fall instruction. We expect that these will guide work on campuses. We expect they give us sort of a look in on what y'all are doing. And they have served for the past 7 years as our most comprehensive public document of student success work underway. This is something we share with our partners at the national level. This is something that makes Georgia somewhat unique. There are very few states that do this type of reporting of campus level success work, and it really makes us both a vanguard state for this work, but also it really does help to shape the ways in which we can support our success work across the state and make sure that the people of Georgia understand that this is the work that is underway in order to support the students that they send to us. So let's talk a bit about the process. Process is generally unchanged. There are two parts to the plan. There's a strategy survey. It's completed online. Those of you who have done it in the past, it's requires the login. We'll talk about that in just a bit, but it shouldn't be a particularly hard lift. It's actually smaller this year than next. It will open next week, and the only reason I'm delaying it by a week is I want to make sure I've got everything tightened down on the survey. The narrative report, again, it's that second part of it. This is so the strategy survey, if you will, gives just a global sense of what you're doing, and then the narrative report is much more focused. Still includes that institutional mission and student body profile. That's important to us because we want to know how your work relates to who you see yourselves as being. There's a new section on improvement practices. This is not an assessment, none of this, and I should start out by saying none of this is assessment from the system office. We are not using this as an assessment tool. This is a reflective tool, but the improvement practice section is new, and it's really how do you do your change process? How do you understand the data that you've got? How do you work the process of knowing and understanding your change? It's just a way for us to understand how you work so that we can support you better. The momentum update is improved. So we in the past have done work. We have the momentum sort of sitting over here, and we had CCG that had been legacy coming through for the last 7 years going through, and they were somewhat disconnected. And we've now done some work to align them. So essentially, the momentum updates, CCG updates are all now in one piece. They're aligned. It should make it fairly straightforward and easy for you to sort of continue to reflect upon your work on that momentum framework, and also to do the follow-up on the Momentum Summit. We do ask in that, the sort of the COVID-19 changes and that section actually mirrors what was asked of the fall to return to instruction section. So I don't think that's going to be a huge novel shift. What it will do is it gives this, because of the submission date, it gives you a little bit more time to reflect on, well, what actually happened? What was our experience when we did return to instruction in the fall? And then again, same as last year, we really want to know, really largely, to sort of acknowledge the teams on campus, but also to have the student success and completion team, as generally and broadly as you care to define it, listed in this report. It's been something, I think, that for the first years we did this, there were a lot of people who were doing a lot of work that didn't really get their names in the credits, and we just want to make sure that those people are acknowledged and recognized on campus. I'll also note that, and there's some intentionality behind this. The student success and completion team does not count against your total credit, so feel free to really give credit where credit is due. Here's a timeline, largely unchanged. It's about a week delayed from last year for the start. The one date I really want to highlight here is the October 30th submission, final reports due to the system office. That is later than it has been in the past, and it is intentionally after midterm census. So you should be able to get retention rates for fall and all of the other data that you want into your discussion. If it turns out that date is still too early for you to get your if it turns out that date is still too early for you to get your data really sort of wrapped into the report, let me know. But I think that should give us ample time for us internally. So for November, what we tend to do is review these reports, ask any questions, and make any edits and changes that we have to in terms of formatting and structure, and then bundle them up and get them ready for release. And that release will still happen December 1st. Like you can see, that we've also pushed back the strategy survey completion date. Again, that's only because sometimes campuses need a little more time to share this around over the summer. But we do like to have that sort of lockdown in hand for the beginning of the fall term. It's just easier for us. It also, we find, gets us the right sort of responses, the responses in the term that we're trying to find. So, CCG data and visualization. I'm going to, before I do that, let me go back a slide. So so if there are any questions, I'm now able to see the chat. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box. At this point, nothing should seem all that unusual, but we'll be getting to some of the new stuff. There are 4 data sets in Click. Click is a data visualization. If you have seen Click, you sort of understand it. It allows you to sort of change and filter out data by different categories that are in the data set. The data is pulled out of ADC, fed directly into the academic data collection, I should say. The ADC is the academic data collection, which is the data that we gather from institutions. It is then pushed into this Click app, which lives on the cloud. It is available at this point because of the way the licensing works. We have 11 or so campus licenses at each institution, and we have done our best to make sure that there are 1 or 2 or 3 folks who are within the CCG orbit who should have a license. Some campuses, because Click is also used by enrollment management, is used by a few other offices on campus. We've sort of had to do some negotiation, but if you should know if you're a licensee, and if you don't know who on your campus is, let me know and I can look it up. I have the list, and we can if there are changes that need to be made at your institution to make sure that license holders that you can see what you need to see, that let us know. The big advantage to the Click apps, and again, it's degrees awarded, enrollment, graduation, and retention, not retentions, but retention. Those apps you can filter and shift as you want, and then take that data and download it if you want to do secondary analysis on it. And you're welcome to do that. Learning support, credit hours, a few other reports will be released in Excel. Those are just much more complicated reports to try and get into Click. We struggled with it last year, and we really aren't sure. It was hard to see how you would format it for that sort of model. So you'll be getting that as well. And again, that I want to really thank the USG Research and Policy Analysis Group for the work they did to get the apps into Click, to develop them. It's something that when you see the finished product, you think it's intuitive and natural, but when you actually go through the process of seeing developed, it is a great deal of work behind it. It's a great deal of work to get the data out of it. And I want to really make sure that if you see things about these apps is what they call them, these visualizations that can be improved, please give us that feedback, because it really, really is helpful to us to know how this can be more useful on campus. And again, the data will be the apps are available now. If you are a licensee, you can grab it. If you aren't a licensee but you want to see it, I can tell you on campus who your license holder is. And then you can also, again, you can always go ahead and grab that, have that data manipulated, filtered as you need it, and downloaded for you. This is what they look like, just so those of you who have not, this is the 10-year retention trend for the USG. This is what the visualizations will look like. You can see over here on the, pardon me, the left-hand side of the screen, there are all kinds of filters you can apply. Those are essentially the filters that we capture in the data system. And then across the system, you see institution specific. That's currently not institution specific because I haven't filtered on an institution. But then below that, you have the categories, and you can see the comparators right on that screen, which is a pretty great thing to be able to do. And again, I encourage you to dig around and play around in that, but also to sort of think about how you might want to see that get improved. So, strategy survey. The strategy survey is revised from 2019. It is not. It is fewer questions. It is more. There are elements that we've just sort of. We're retiring some of these elements because at this point they have been rolled into your momentum work, so we don't feel that they're all that they're all that productive. But also importantly, we want to make sure that this is as useful as possible. There are new updates, and there are some elements that are talking about shift to virtual instruction and activities, so be prepared for that. That there'll be some conversation and question. And we really are just curious that as things have shifted to online, what all has shifted virtually, and what are the platforms and tools you're using. Again, I'll point out this thing you have to log in. The way this is structured is it requires you to be logged into the system so that you can save and share. So that you may not be the person who's starting the survey.
Jonathan, you got a couple of
questions. I got a question here on slide 12. I'm not seeing slide 12. Whoops. So that's the timeline slide, and that will be in the instructions. It just simply says the timeline. I'm sorry, Juliana, if you can't see it. And follow up to that, the Click apps are actually up to date now. They update they update shortly after census. So I think that's
okay. Jonathan, this is Juliana. I am only seeing slide 12. You're advancing, but the screen, what I'm seeing on my screen is stuck.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else is having that problem, but you're moving through the slides and I'm seeing a little red circle. And slide 12.
Okay.
It's
Good.
moving on other screens. It's moving on other screens.
Oh, okay. It's just me then.
Actually, it's on mine like yours, Julia. This is Robert. So
All right,
I think
so here's what we're gonna
we
do.
both may have the same problem.
All right, so we're going to shift over to my desktop. How exciting is this? So let's go back. I'm not going to. All right. We're just going to share desktop. And Robert, I'm relying on you to tell me.
Yeah, so I'm seeing the desktop now, and also Julian, for anyone else where that happens, if you hit that, I believe it's the red circle that you saw up in the upper left-hand corner, you can request, well, anyway, it allowed me to advance through the slides. I'm not an expert on this either, but just a tip for you. I clicked on that, then I was able to advance forward. So
Wow.
We could try that.
Robert Todd earns a advanced Microsoft Teams badge for the day. All right, so quickly, here's the timeline. Again, the October 30th deadline. I think this is the last slide we showed for everybody. The visualizations are up and up to date. The data will be released on the 26th through Excel. These are what the visualizations look like. I'm going to pause here and just sort of give you a second to sort of look at it. But many of you probably may have seen these. If you're used to Tableau, it is a very different flavor and feel from Tableau. So there is a bit of a learning curve, and if you are a campus that's invested in Tableau, Click is a bit of a different learning curve, and it's hard to get. You may need to spend a little bit of time just playing and getting familiar with where things are and how it does measure this. It has many of the same features. It just places things differently and sometimes plays differently. And again, with this, you can actually run your own reports on this as well, much like in Tableau. Strategy surveys, again, I think this is where we were, back caught up. There's a login. I think I've communicated with everybody who wasn't certain, but if you're still not sure, if you're the institution who's got the editor for your campus, let me know. There will be an email going out next week that will include the link, your new updated password, and it will log in. And when you log in, and when you log in on campus should take you directly to the survey. So if there's any problems with that, you always just go ahead and give me a shout, and I will get you logged in and checked out. As August 7th is the deadline. If you need a little more time, let me know, but it tends to be plenty of time. The link will go live next week, and you'll get communication from me about that. There is the survey login. It will currently not open up, I don't believe. I think it will tell you it's not accepting anything right now, but there will be a preview online where you can sort out and print out all the questions you'll need to ask. Again, that will be live in sometime later this week or earlier next week. Think I've got everyone, but if you have any questions, you're welcome to email me and let me know. That's what it looks like. I'm just going to go through this. Many of you have seen it, but you'll have it's an online survey, so you see that you'll have a login page. You have to put in your username, which is not your name, but it will be it's not single login, so it'll be like your campus name. It's usually the letters of your initial of your campus, AMSC for Atlanta Metro, plus the year 2020, and then some password, and then you have to answer a math question. They are generally not algebra, so we are not looking at college algebra. We are looking more at arithmetic, but it is to make sure that, and it's just a captcha on the site. But don't panic. We will support you on this if you have any questions. There's my email for it. So the strategy survey has actually been really helpful to me. We're still trying to figure out how to make it look right for folks to take a look at, but that will be my goal for this year, is to make sure that the survey is something that you can actually view and see who else is doing what. So the narrative report, I want to acknowledge where we are on time. Coming in about 25 minutes in, we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about sort of what you'll tell us and what you've done. So again, remember it's for 2019, 2020. It's for the last year. There's some degree to which this has got a little bit of a perspective look, because we're asking for your updates and next step. We really want to know what you did last year. The template is back and it's on the CCG website. We're asking about your change process, what data you look at, what's involved, all that, and what has worked, where's your view shown is going well and not well, sort of like And again, this is very much a formative conversation. And then finally, we have aligned the reports with momentum framework. And I'm going to talk, there was a question in the chat before I logged out that's specific to that. And I'm going to talk about that in a bit. So institutional mission and student body profile, this is unchanged from previous years. Y'all do a great job with this, but it really is a good way for us to sort of have a, and for some of y'all, this does change time over time, either enrollment shifts, priority shifts, mission has changed for some of y'all, but just make sure that you tell us like sort of who you are. If you're going to include data tables, and many of y'all do, they should relate to work that you're working on. And for the most part, folks are good. What we're trying to avoid is sort of having a front-loaded section that just is a global comprehensive overview of every aspect of your school. Mostly in what we're looking at is how does this connect? How does this information about your students connect to the work that you're focused on? So this is actually new, this improvement practices, and this was suggested to me by a couple of folks, but this idea that we have focused a great deal on pulling folks together and helping you. We have shaped a change process and a discussion process based on the ways that we think y'all operate, but it is not always the way that campuses operate. So how do you understand your work? How do you learn from your success? Who is involved in that work? What data and information do you need? There are elements of this in the data in the template, but this is really how you tell us how you like to work, and that's how you understand your work. It's really useful for us at this stage. I think this work, and tell me again, this comes out of the Momentum Summit 3. The work has matured to a point where campuses truly, I feel, own their own momentum strategies and their own momentum activities. To such an extent that understanding how we can support you in improving and continuing your progress is really critically important. So having an understanding in this section, again, it's not it is much more of a reflective essay than any sort of assessment essay, but we really want to know how you understand your work. So the momentum update. So we have taken what used to be these strategy updates, these sections that were high priority, high impact practices, and ask you to align them to momentum. So when you go to the report template, when you look at the report, we're looking for things that work on those on purpose, on pathways, and on mindset. Most of your work, in fact, almost all of your work will fall under those categories. But we want to align those in such a way that we understand them in terms of how they're aligned with both your ongoing work and your sort of anticipated work align up with that sort of core framework. We have found that campuses this will hopefully, we're hoping to lighten the load in reporting. There's not a secondary or a supplemental update on momentum. There are simply two parts in the momentum update. One is on the ongoing work, so that could be everything from your co-requisite work and your credit intensity work down to your transition to college and your advising and your early alerts. All that work falls under that framework. And then there are plans that you developed in Momentum Summit 3. And we want to have a checkpoint where you say, well, where are we on those plans? What's working? What's not working? Where we had to affect? Where have they been affected? And then again, built into this is this idea that you'll do some observations and next steps, not sext steps. Good God, that's like the world's worst typo. Talk about an unfortunate typo. I will correct this before this goes out. But the next steps are really important for us to know where you're taking it. That's and then again, this is from last year. This is not new, but again, this is where we let the credits roll. So I think, and Robert, if you can check the chat, I'm just going to say like that gives an idea. The template, which we'll talk about in a sec, gives a little bit more of an understanding of how we're aligning the three. But again, your momentum, your update will now have sort of a purpose, pathways, mindset framework. We understand that in mindset, most of the work has been around getting the survey done, and that's perfectly fine and acceptable, and that's actually what most of us what we expect most campuses to talk about is how have we done this sort of delivered the survey and developed the survey. But equally, there are campuses where they have done some initial work in terms of interventions and in terms of understanding their students, and we want to know that as well. And so there'll be that opportunity in that section. But again, most of the work you've been reporting on the past 2 years will align with some of these. and they will all fall into that template. The template is a Word file. It's available for download. It includes details for each element. It looks a little bit like this. Well, it actually looks a lot like this. So you can see you've got this sort of opportunity to go through, and it looks a degree like the template used to use. You can see where you'd overwrite on the right-hand side. You give whatever the description is in there. Overwrite that with what you're talking about and what's being asked, and then you can repeat that table for each as you go. I'm going to note, these are recommended. They are not required. If you want to write and a number of campuses have really developed reports that are based on what is useful on their campus, that is great. Do that. The reason we're providing the template is partly to provide framework as we've shifted towards a momentum approach, momentum framework. We want to make sure that that framework is honored and is sort of understood. But the other side of this is campuses have told me it's a lot easier to write off a template. Many campuses continue to use the template even after we discontinued their use, just because it's a really helpful tool to make sure we get the information covered. And again, I'm perfectly fine with that. You can see that these make sure that's the right one. Template 3.1. Yeah. So one other thing, there's a COVID-19 update. I'm not providing you a COVID-19 update. I don't have one. But the campus updates ask, and these are again entirely mirrored on the fall return to instruction questions. They ask you to provide sort of an update of what needs to be adjusted, what alternate arrangements can be implemented, how can you change what you planned for your Momentum Summit 3 and Momentum Year work, and then what needs to what would implement these alternate arrangements. These are entirely embedded in what you've already reported, and I would not expect these to change, other than the fact that these reports will be coming in several months, 4 months after the initial plans were written, and they'll be coming in about 2.5 to 3 months after you've returned to instruction. So there may be some information you want to talk about in this report that you did not get into your return to instruction plans. Perfectly fine. If your plans were perfect and they were implemented with fidelity, and that's what you did, and that's what you want to say, that's also fine. This is simply we want to make sure that there is both an opportunity to reflect that in this document of what changes with momentum, particularly momentum approach planning with respect to COVID, but also give you an opportunity to sort of further inform us in terms of where things have shifted. So at that point, that's the end of it. I'm going to pause here and take whatever questions that may come up. And Robert, again, I'm going to rely on you. I can't see a chat box.
Chat, just one extra thing on chat, if some of you haven't noticed it or paid attention, the Click apps have training videos available. Each Click app has a training video available that walks you through the use of it. Lori Haygood posted that. Rachna, so you gave it a thumbs up. So that one's worth repeating. If you don't know how to use it, it's pretty easy to understand.
Right, and those are on the landing page of the Click app. So when you come in, the first page will have like training apps for each app. Thank you, Robert. All right, so you've gotten to the point where you're ready to review and submit your reports. They're online, they're Word files, not PDFs, and that's, and the appendices are separate. Appendices don't count towards, oh, I should have noted too. In fact, this didn't come up, I can't believe I left it out. The word count, the page limits has been extended to 15 pages. Don't feel obligated to fill out 15 pages, but given what we've asked for and given the past years that people have struggled with getting it under 10 or 12, 15 feels generous enough, but if not, let me know. But the updates are one Word file. The appendices, which do not count against your page limits, is a separate Word file. Files should be submitted through the Provost's office. You no longer need to have a letter from the President's office, but we do want them to come through the Provost's office just simply as our, and again, that would mean that there's an email that is the submission email that would tell us that this is the final version. You submit them online through the completega.org/submit2020 page. You can also submit them through ccg@usg.edu. Either one is fine. They'll both get to us. They're due by October 30th. Again, as I noted, if there's difficulty in getting the reports to it, getting those final data to complete your retention information and other data you may want, please let me know. We can push that back a little bit, but we do have to try and make that December 1st deadline. One for bonus points. So every year, and I want to especially thank a handful of institutions that are really generous about posting and allowing us to use their the images of their graduates. Every year we have a banner or cover image for the report, and I'm going to add in the submission page. There's an opportunity for you to submit an image from your campus. And again, we've always used caps and gowns. I'm not wedded to caps and gowns, but caps and gowns seem to be kind of what we're about. But if you're interested and you have good campus images of that we would be able to use for it, we would be delighted to have you submit. There are fields in there for submitting the image and submitting the credits and other use restrictions, limitations, so that we don't run afoul of your copyrights. So that's just a supplementary update. At that point, just getting help. If you have need for help, they're on the web. That should be all posted. This presentation will be there as soon as we get these typos out. I conveniently said soon because I knew there'd be some typos. Strategy survey and preview again will be up next week on the 22nd. I expect to post that out. But everything else is available online. But as with everything else, you can always reach out to me directly, and we will sort those problems out. So at that point, I'm done. If you got questions, put them in the chat box. You can also email them. I really appreciate it. I think you can also, if you have questions, you also at this point you can unmute yourself if you haven't already. And
also before we even do that, Eric Tack has asked, in terms of signing off on the report, if the ownership of these programs is outside of the provost office.
You know, that's a good point, Eric. And I guess at that point, what that would be, so if ownership of those programs is outside the provost office, I'm still going to ask that I'm going to sort of delegate this to the provost to make sure that everybody's okay with this. What I need is a single point of contact. If this wants to come from your president's office, I will also understand that. The reason we've done this in the past through the president's office, but the reason I've changed this from the past is that the president's offices have oftentimes said, why am I submitting this? But if you, it needs to come from somewhere where I know this is the final version. So whoever sends it in, it needs to be very clear that this is the version that's been submitted finally. And that's the, if that is in general the provost office, but it comes from outside of that, that is fine by me. Are there any other questions? All right, well, look, thank you so much. Again, I want to point out again where we, want to end where we started, that the progress we've made has been pretty impressive. I sort of look forward, sadistically look forward, or masochistically look forward to these, probably sadistically look forward to it as well. But I really do look forward to these reports because they do, they're like letters, they're like getting a letter from the field. And I really do appreciate the sort of insight and look in that this gives me. You can always reach me at my email. You can actually always reach me at that phone. That phone forwards over to my cell. If you have any questions about this as it goes forward, I really appreciate your time and your effort on this. And I'm going to give you, and again, if there are questions or you have needs, please let me know. I want to again thank Robert and thank Vance for joining me today and for their support on this work going forward.
One last thing, I had a momentary loss, but I saw Barbara Hunt wrote a question asking when the draft is due. Did that happen when I got bumped off?
No. So there is no draft due. We have. If you want us to review a draft, you can submit it at any time before October. But we actually, I have had in the last 3 years exactly, I think, 2 drafts submitted to me. And so I'm willing to look at them, but it's much more of an ad hoc process. The due date for these reports is October 30th. In order to get all the data in, if you want an early review to see if you're on track, feel free to submit it at any point.
Jonathan, can you hear me?
I sure can. Ah. Okay,
hey. Thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. I have a quick question. I know we've got a kind of return to campus plan that was, issued by the USG that a lot of folks are working on. And within that, there's some momentum. There's a section on momentum here and momentum approach student success. It seems like a lot of the questions that are in there are also in this report. Is the expectation that we basically align those two things in terms of what is in that return to campus piece?
Right. So yeah. So like I noted, here we go. This is actually the exact same language that is in the return to campus report.
Okay.
So I didn't, and it is perfectly fine for it to be the exact same language that you submit to me. The thing is that you'll have a few more months under your belt, so there may be additional, and you will actually have return to campus as opposed to just planning to return to campus. So you are welcome to submit exactly the same material, same sort of discussion, but this may actually be an opportunity for you to sort of reflect a little bit further on that. There is intentional alignment between these two, and that's not an accident, because we sort of wanted to make sure we harmonize that. So thanks for the question, Ron.
And also, it's an opportunity for fame and fortune, Ryan, because we are getting questions continuously from outside the USG, from other systems, and from national organizations asking us what we're doing, how we're responding. And, they're always looking for creative ways to respond. So just keep in mind that we may pass on some of the information to those who are looking for solutions similar to yours.
Yeah, which is more the emphasis on the fame, less on the fortune. I think, I'm gonna go ahead and say fortune is an unlikely outcome from this.
And Ryan is actually referencing, I think it's page 7 of the return to campus planning for May. So page 7.
Yeah. So yeah, and so Ryan, very good question. Again, we did mirror these and sort of wanted to make sure that, and again, wanted to reflect the fact that the plans that you built in Athens may have to have some adjustments, and the plans that you've built for the last 3 years will have some adjustments, and we just want to understand in a honest and frank way what that will look like. Oops. There. Are there further questions? Well, as the clock ticks down towards 60, I just want to again extend a personal thank you to all of you for the work you've done over the last years to make this such a success, and the work that I know are underway on your campuses. Without further ado, I'll let you go. Again, I'm always available through email and phone if you need me. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Have a good one, Jonathan.
Thank you.